All right, you my friends, welcome back. I've got a special guest with me. Brittany Glauz joins me, who is the founder and creator of Brush with Britt. And we're going to talk a little bit about hygiene today and the impact it has on your practice, on case acceptance, and how that factor, how all that works in with marketing as well. So excited to have Brittany here with me. A she's a lot of things actually. I was reading through her bio and it's so cool. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so pumped to have her on here is because she has such a wealth of knowledge. She's got the clinical side, but she also understands the business and marketing side as well. And so this is going to be a really great conversation. So Brittany Glauz is the creator of Brush with Britt. She's been able to leverage her knowledge and expertise to provide invaluable guidance and support to dental hygienists everywhere, inspiring them to advance their careers. With a following of over 150,000 on TikTok, 100,000 on Instagram, and a podcast with 100 plus episodes, Brittany's impact on the industry is undeniable. She is dedicated to advancing the careers of dental hygienists through interprofessional collaboration and medical dental integration. This has earned her the 2023 Award of Distinction and the World Hygienist Award in 2024, which is awesome. And her commitment has built a reputation as a respected leader and mentor in the dental hygiene community. So with that, welcome, Britt. So excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I know it's a mouthful of words, so I appreciate
Well, it's
that.
all good too. I mean, it's so cool. I mean, every line I'm like, holy cow, this is awesome. I mean, you've just been able to do so much, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. Why don't you take a minute too and just kind of explain how you got to this point? You know, what got you into dentistry to start off with, and then what took you to this point that you're at right now?
Yeah, I would love to share. So I originally got into the field as a registered dental assistant. And I did that for some time before pursuing hygiene, and ultimately took on hygiene at the time because it was the route that I was already on with my prereqs, and I wanted to become financially stable. So that's really what drew me to the career. I wasn't super passionate about prevention at the time, but luckily for me, getting through it, I actually found that I really love prevention. And I graduated in 2020, and so my program got shut down. And that's kind of when I took on social media and decided to put out the information and the posts that I was looking for when I was in dental hygiene school. And so it's kind of like the perfect timing with COVID and graduating. And it was before like even reels were not even a thing. TikTok was not even a thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a perfect storm. And I just took that on and started creating content. And once I graduated, I continued my education and just kept on building from there. Like I just never stopped learning and got out there, went to dental conferences and started networking. And that's where, I've been able to take Brush with Britt to what it is today.
That's awesome. And that's a great lesson for all of us, listening too. Just if you want to make something happen, you start doing it. I mean, you start by creating content and that builds on itself. And then if you start reaching out and connecting with other people as well, all of that has this multiplier effect on the growth of your business or the vision that you have, And so I think for dentists and really hygienists and the dental practices in general, like that's a huge lesson right there. I think some people are a little hesitant to take that initial step. They feel awkward, they feel a little uncomfortable, they feel vulnerable, and they don't like how they sound or they don't like how they look on camera. And so that stops them from doing it. So actually, let me just ask you about that, Britt, if you don't mind. What were some of the thoughts that you had initially when you first started? Or did you just know that I'm going to do this regardless?
I didn't just know. Like, I feel like at the time it was just picture posts. So at that point, it was a lot easier, I feel like, to just, take a picture, write a caption, and you didn't have to show up as like this, your personality
Yeah.
and like your voice, like you were saying. So that wasn't really like in the cards at the time. But then as social media grows and still does, like you have to be able to change with it. And even now, still, I hate hearing my voice. Like I have a whole podcast and I don't like hearing my voice. But I think what like pushes me to keep going is just the fact that I know that I can help somebody. And that's why I'm like creating the content to begin with. So that kind of just pushes me past like, okay, whatever. If I don't like the way I sound, oh well. But if this information will help somebody out there, then that's why I want to do it.
That makes it easier, right? I mean, when you're thinking about who you're trying to help, then you're less focused on, yeah, how am I being perceived right now, you know? And so that
Yeah,
does make it a lot
everybody's going
easier.
to think something, so you might as well just make the content. They're going to think about it
Yeah.
whether you put it out there or not. So just do
Yeah.
it.
It's a great point. Great point. Okay, well, let's get in. I've got a couple of questions for you, and we'll kind of riff on a few of these, but I wanted to get your thoughts on a few key things, and then we can kind of see where this takes us to. But I know that it's interesting too, because every practice is a little bit different as they look at hygiene and the role of hygiene in their practice. So one example is I worked with one of my clients early on in my career, was a practice that historically didn't even have a hygienist. It was this kind of in and out churn and burn type of approach where they just wanted to get people in and do extractions. They wanted to do all this work and then really kind of never see them again, and then later on, most of my other practices are not like this, but there's contrasting that between a lot of practices that they value hygiene. They see it as, kind of this entry point into their practice. And it's something that it allows them to continually treat their patients and provide really kind of the best care possible in the long term, And so, talk to me a little bit about that. How is hygiene kind of that entryway, or how do you see hygiene and how it fits into the practice, I guess? Let's start there.
I think for most practices, a lot of patients are seeing the hygienist the longest out of, throughout the appointments throughout the year and how long our appointments are. Like, yes, if they have extensive restorative work, they might be with the dentist for some time. But for the most part, patients are with us the longest out of everybody in the practice. And so we really do hold a huge role in that patient experience and retention when it comes to keeping the patient there in the practice and also referring patients. And a lot of the times, if you have a new patient, they are either being greeted by maybe a dental assistant or a hygienist. And that first visit, they might be the first face that patient sees is the hygienist. And we're really like starting the visit and setting the baseline or the tone for what that patient is going to expect at that practice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the key there too. I mean, that's kind of how I see it as well. And you're just spending so much time with the hygienist, and if I'm thinking about, I have a daughter who's, I've got four daughters actually. So, but my oldest has always had a rough time going to the dentist. And I remember a specific appointment, she was mortified. Like she just had built up this idea that it was going to be painful, that it was going to be terrible. And just anything that they were to do is going to be just a nightmare. And so I get that the feelings that some people have, especially as a parent trying to get your child to come, that they need the care, but they're not willing to, or you yourself are like, I don't want to be poked and prodded and all that. So, I mean, that's the part that they look at, I think, the most. They concentrate on, it's easy to come into the office. People are nice at this front desk, and, usually the assistant can get you comfortable and everything like that. That's not the problem. It's then when they start bringing the tools out, and they're really starting to sweat a little bit. And they're just so focused on this. So I think, yeah, you're exactly right. This has a major, major impact on what they're, like you said, setting the tone.
Yeah,
So
and I find too, a lot of the times, if you're seeing recare patients, the patients coming in with the hygienist, and we're the ones that are reviewing the medical history and checking the
yeah,
blood pressure and doing all the things, and then doctor comes in kind of afterwards, and sometimes it's very quick, and like
yeah,
we're continuing to build that relationship for the patient at the practice.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So tell me, Britt, is this something that is generally talked about, or do you feel like this is an opportunity for practices to talk more about it in terms of, hey, this is the type of experience that we want to deliver? Because that recare appointment is so critical. You are spending the most of the time with the patient more than anyone else in the practice. So is there a lot of talk about that in terms of, hey, this is what we're trying to do? Or is that something that is kind of maybe a missed opportunity?
I think it is a missed opportunity at a lot of practices, but the way things are evolving, I think that offices are starting to understand it more. And also with burnout in hygiene, us clinicians, us providers, like we want those appointments. We want to do the things that we were taught in hygiene school and be thorough. And that's what makes us feel complete as a provider, as a prevention specialist. And so there is definitely opportunity there for offices to start changing and to stand out because patients want that. Patients want to be taken care of and they want to learn. And I found that patients really appreciate the time that I spend going over things.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think there is missed opportunity, but also a lot of opportunity for offices to pick up this change and kind of lead the way for the future of what hygiene and prevention should be.
Yeah. Do you feel like dentists are open? Say if you're in the practice and you say, "Hey, I really think that I feel strongly we should be doing this, this, and this." How open are dentists generally to that type of feedback?
I think it depends on the office. And also, insurance dictates so much of what we do. So it also, plays a huge role in what is leading that dentist's decision to do things. But I think that there are a lot of great dentists out there that are really open to it. And they truly do want to retain their hygienists and have a good, thriving hygiene department, because once you start learning about the numbers, you start to understand that, oh, there actually is production in hygiene and this is valuable to my practice. So I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something that just has struck me as we've been talking is just, yeah, the influence that a hygienist can have, obviously just on the patient experience, but I think just really in defining, or maybe not defining, but also just kind of carrying out the vision or the culture of a practice, because you are, again, spending that much time with the patient and you have that much interaction. You're kind of setting the tone. You're kind of helping them see this is kind of what to expect when you come into the practice.
Yeah.
So
And I think too, there are some hygienists that, maybe don't want to practice that way and that's not the practice for them. But then there's also like a lot of hygienists that do want to do those things and go the extra step, the extra mile for their patients and the practice.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about referrals. Referrals is something that I always, man, it's just that's one thing that if I could encourage practice to do more, it would just be focus on referrals. Because we do so little of it in terms of proactive efforts. We do good job clinically. We try to provide a good experience, but above and beyond that, we don't generally do a whole lot. We just kind of hope and pray that patients will send people our way. So talk to me about, if as a hygienist, what is your role in helping really kind of generate or orchestrate more referrals, would you say?
Oh, I think it's huge. Like, I've worked at some practices where they maybe focus on it a little bit more, but it's such a big part of bringing new patients into the practice and new patients that will stay. I mean, you have some families that have so many people, like that is so much production and like getting more and more patients into the practice. So I think too, sometimes those conversations can feel awkward. Like when you first start thinking about them, like, oh, you're going to tell, how am I going to tell this patient to like refer their friends and family,
Yeah.
but I think just the initial thought of it is kind of intimidating, but it's so easy, like scheduling their next visit and maybe handing them an appointment card and be like, we'd love to see your friends and family, like if they're in town or whatever. And like I've had some patients come in and they might have mentioned that they have a spouse or something like that, and I'm like, oh, didn't you say like you have a fiance? Like I haven't seen
Yeah.
them in here yet.
Yeah.
Something as simple as that. They're like, oh yeah, you know what, I need to tell her to make an appointment.
Yeah, I know. It's those simple things that won't eventually become habitual. They become part of your process, and they make such a difference. And as you were talking to Britt, I thought, you're getting to know them really well. I mean, as you're spending that much time with them, you're talking about, and I get every hygienist is probably a little bit different in that approach, but almost most of the ones that I've seen in my life, I've been very, very friendly, like they are generally interested in the patient too, outside of just their teeth and their oral health. And that alone builds a lot of that trust, and because it's their first, really one of the first steps, it makes it easier for people to refer because it's, they know that most people generally know that they need to go see a dentist. They know they should probably get checked up and have their teeth clean and looked at. And so that sell it's not a hard sell at all. And so if you're able to communicate that, like you said, in easy kind of natural ways, it can go a long ways to referrals.
Yeah, and sometimes I even just like to say something as like, "Oh, you know, if you have any friends and family, we would love to take care of them," or "I would love to take care of I'd love to take care of your friends and family if you want to refer them to have an appointment." You know, something like that. I feel like that just saying like not like, "Oh, we want to see them," but you're saying like, "I want to take care of your
Yeah.
friends and family." Like if they come in, I
Yeah.
just feel like that kind of goes a little bit further.
Yeah, that language is powerful, so if you can,
Mhm.
it has an effect on the speaker and it has an effect on the listener for sure. So I love that. I love that. And I think too, as we look at reviews, for example, I mean, if people, that's a big driver for practices when someone's looking for a new dental home, they're looking at reviews more often than not, and what are the reviews about more often than not? It's about the hygiene, it's about the
Yeah, it's about
hygienist.
their cleaning.
Yeah, and that makes sense because that's what they're spending most of their time in the practice doing is just getting their teeth
Yeah.
cleaned, and they're seeing it twice a year. And that alone, I mean, is just a great tool to, it gives you the chance to meet with your patients on a regular basis to make sure they're healthy, to prevent all these things, and then from a marketing standpoint to remind them, just say, hey, we love seeing people like you. Like if we could clone you, or if there's anyone that that's
Yeah.
like you, we would love to see them, and just be genuine about it, and it's amazing what that can do.
Yeah, reviews go a long way. I guess when I first started, I didn't really realize like how many reviews come in and they're about hygiene or about the cleaning. I mean, it makes sense because like you said, they see us more frequently. But I guess I didn't really pay attention to it until I started actually practicing. And I would look because I was curious, like, okay, like are patients, saying anything about me? Like you want to have
Yeah,
good reviews and stuff. So
totally.
once you start like actually paying attention to them, you're like, oh, okay, I have a huge impact on how patients like perceive and the dental practice and how their experience is.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I know. So, and you probably see this all the time too. If a hygienist leaves, patients that's a good, I mean, there's probably a decent amount of patients that are like, well, if they're close, I'm just going to go wherever they go. Right.
Yeah, they're going to follow.
Yeah. And that's a testament to that relationship that hygienists can build, and I just think that's amazing. I mean, there's still, um, we had one, that left to take a different position and, actually kind of a management position. So we were excited for her, but every time we're always just like, man, I wish Kristen was still here. She was just that good, and it just makes that whole experience that much better. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit too about, we've talked about referrals, but also just tell me about the role that hygienists play with respect to case acceptance in general.
Yeah. So this is another thing too that I didn't realize was as important as it is as a new grad. And then I started learning about, communication skills and what some people will call preheating. Like they'll say
Yeah.
like you preheat the patient, which is basically like co-diagnosing or informing the patient of what the doctor is about to say. And I mean, once you start doing it, you start realizing like, oh, this plays a huge role in the patient actually accepting treatment when doctor comes in and diagnoses it. So a lot of the times, I find myself pointing things out, and you learn what the doctor is probably going to diagnose and the treatment that they are probably going to say is needed.
Yeah.
And that right there also shows like the patient that you're confident in what you're saying. And then doctor comes in and confirms, and that just kind of reiterates exactly what you said. And they're like, okay, I understand. Like this isn't just, we're making this up and I don't really have a cavity. Britt already showed it to me. She showed me the x-ray. She showed me the photo. Doctor comes in and it basically says exactly what I just said. And patients actually end up coming back just because they trust you both as a provider.
Yeah. Yeah. That consistency is paramount. I mean, it shows that yeah, everyone's on the same page. You're not, yeah, not blowing smoke or anything like that.
Hmm.
And well, tell me though, Britt, is that something that is decided upon in advance, or is that, I mean, something that practices have to, I mean, because I could easily envision that, there's hygienists that they just want to work on that. They don't want to, because there's that connotation that preheating and like salesy stuff, they don't want to get involved in that. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think for me, I just instead of thinking of it as like selling something, I thought about it as just like the patient's best interest for them to understand the treatment that is being diagnosed. I think just because in dentistry, a lot of the times patients just think, just because of the way dentistry or dentists have been perceived, it's like, I don't know why that's been the background, but people just think they're selling something, you know? So I feel like if I could help that patient understand the treatment that is needed, then the patient will be better off instead of them just thinking that we're trying to sell something. So that's kind of how I started to look at it. And I think it's all just in the communication part too, just making sure you're having the conversations with the patients and not letting them leave confused. A lot of the times that's when they're not coming back for treatment, is because they didn't understand it. And it does depend on the practice. Some dentists are going to want you to be more proactive in co-diagnosing, and some maybe don't want you to do that. But it takes time to learn too, because like in hygiene school, we were taught about it, but it wasn't like something that I knew I was going to be doing as much as I do now. And each doctor is a little bit different too. So some are more conservative, some are going to be diagnosing more things. So you have to learn the dentist that you're working with. So I think when practices hire a hygienist, they should be explaining to them like, this is the expectation. I think sometimes there's this idea that we all hygienists just like practice the same way and we're just going to do the same thing, but it really does vary by each practice. And I feel like it would be super helpful if the dentist were to explain, this is what I expect of you, like when I come in to do an exam. Like that would just be so helpful, rather than just, hiring us and then we get in there and then they're waiting for us to like co-diagnose and we don't do it. But nobody ever told us that's what they expect,
Right. Right. So for hygienists that maybe are in that situation, that's a good plug to, hey, just go talk to your doctor and say, what expectations do you have? Is there anything else that you would have them kind of ask them about?
Yeah, I think sometimes dentists want to know certain things when you're kind of doing what they call like a handoff. So, the dentist comes into the operatory to see the patient and you're kind of giving a summarization of like what you found with the patient. Every dentist expects different things. So making sure you have a good understanding of what they're looking for. Like sometimes they want you to say like the probing depths or like the bleeding spots. Sometimes they don't even want you to give that information. So it just really varies across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's a case by case, but it's, that's where like you mentioned, that the communication piece is critical, and that's both from an internal side of things, team member to team member, but also from, team to patient, and just making sure that they feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, I've seen it too, where like I've gone through co-diagnosing and, you're preheating and stuff. And then dentist comes in and just like says, diagnosis like number 2 MO, but doesn't explain it to the patient. And then like the patient or the doctor leaves and the patient's like, what just happened? And I have to be like, oh, you have a cavity, So there's like communication on both ends from hygiene and from the doctor that has to happen in order for the patient to have the best experience. And that's how I think of it. Like, I feel like the doctor needs to be like, let me know the treatment. I'll put it in the computer, but then take the time to say, this is what Britt found and this is the treatment that is needed, and give them a brief explanation of what was just diagnosed. And then I can handle the questions after that.
Yeah. Yeah. That would make sense to me. As I'm thinking about it from a patient standpoint, just to have, the hygienist explain it, what they're finding along the way. And then the doctor comes in and validates or confirms that. And then, they go and do whatever they need to do. And then, just kind of resolving any questions with the hygienist and treatment moving forward. That makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes it gets like conversations get lost just because we're always pressed on time. And so we kind of lose that sense of connection that we have to have with the patient in order to give them a good experience.
Yeah. What are your thoughts too, Britt, on just the, as we're talking about patient experience, do you like to kind of just involve the patient on every step of the way? If they're going through a cleaning and this is what I'm doing right now, this is, explaining why they're doing what they're doing, or is that just kind of a patient by patient basis, or is that just a process that you develop over time? What's kind of your take on that to deliver that you feel like a better patient experience?
Yeah, I like to explain like what I'm doing, and I kind of it depends on how in depth I go with, telling them exactly what I'm doing. But I always start, like, if I'm seeing a new patient, I give them a brief, like, synopsis of what the appointment is going to look like. And then while I'm going through each step, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and review your medical history. Okay, let me check your blood pressure real quick. Now I'm going to do your gum measurements. And I always explain a little bit about what those numbers mean before I start. And then, going through the cleaning process too, I also let them know, okay, I'm going to go ahead and use the ultrasonic now. This is what it does. Okay, I'm going to use some hand scale. Like, it's very quick, but I do take a little bit of time just to let them know, like, what's going on. Because I know if I'm in an appointment and there's just things going on and moving around, you kind of feel lost in your visit, you know? And I think it's kind of nice to know just little steps of what's going on.
Yeah, I love the idea of kind of laying it out beforehand, like a roadmap. It is what we're going to go through during the appointment, so patients can kind of visually see, internally, and say, "Hey, oh, this is kind of where we're at in this stage of the appointment. I'm halfway there, or whatever." And like you said, I think it can be pretty efficient. You don't have to stop and formally go and review through everything. It's just kind of as you're going, and there's going to be a lot of patients that have heard it, and they don't. They might listen, they might not, but it's kind of a check-in, like that.
Yeah. And I always tell them too, like, I'll let them know, like, how long the visit's going to be. Cause I think sometimes, like, you're halfway through the visit and they're like, how long is this going to take? So I always say, okay, I have you down for, an hour visit today for your prophy or whatever.
Yeah.
And then even things like the oral cancer screening, I always tell my patients, like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do an oral cancer screening. I'm just looking for any, like, lumps or bumps, anything that's abnormal, that's not normally there. That way they know in their head what I'm doing. Cause I think so often patients are just like, oh no, I've never had an oral cancer screening done. And it's like, you might have, like, they just didn't tell you.
Yeah. Pretty good chances now, that they have. They just didn't realize it. Yeah. That's always so important, just to check in and let them know what's going on. And then they feel like they're in control. Yeah. Then they feel like, hey, okay, and now I know what we're doing, where we're going. They can always ask questions too. But I think just if you're the one informing them, they're a lot more likely to ask questions too, because they're always doing that check-in. Where if you're not, if they're kind of in the dark, then they might feel a little more hesitant to raise their hand or say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say that too, raise your hand if you need anything, and then I'll do check-ins in between. And I have also been trying to be more intentional about, like, using the patient's name more frequently too throughout the visit, because I feel like that just helps them to just feel more confident in their provider. And before, I might not, like, say their name very often, but now I'm like, hey, Mark, are you doing okay? And I feel like that's kind of, like, reassuring.
Yeah, absolutely. What do they say? The favorite sound is the sound of your own name.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that goes a long way, especially when that, like, you might not always remember someone else's name, but when they remember your name, you're like, wow, that's cool.
It feels good. It feels good.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, let me switch gears a little bit and ask you about. So this is, what do patients ask about that might not make it to the doctor's ears? That they might not be comfortable asking a doctor, for example, but they feel comfortable with you and they're going to ask you. So what are some of those things that you hear in the chair?
I think oftentimes it's about treatment. Honestly, like, I think it's the doctor diagnosing something and then leaving, and then them being like, wait, I have to get a what? And like, wait, what is that? They always ask more in-depth questions about the treatment as soon as the doctor leaves.
Yeah. And so I know, and that just kind of speaks to the relationship, right? I mean, that they feel comfortable with you, that you've spent the time with them. And often doctors are so, they're kind of going from up top and doing lots of different things. So yeah, I mean, it just shows that comfort level with the patient.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is there anything that you feel like, as a hygienist, that you would want your doctor to know? I mean, is there something that, and I get that this can be somewhat of a sticky situation or a delicate situation, but what are things that doctors should know that they might not know from a hygiene perspective? If that makes sense.
Just about, like, being a hygienist or working in a practice, or in what way?
Yeah, I'd say both. Yeah, I was kind of thinking it both, from your role as a hygienist, but also just kind of comprehensively as a practice. This is what I'm seeing from my viewpoint.
Yeah, I think as a hygienist, the thing that has kept me in a role and has made me feel whole as a provider is just having the autonomy to practice prevention in the way that I was taught to do. I think a lot of the times we are restricted on the things that we want to be able to do. And it's just made all the difference having a doctor that truly values patient care, and even something like a hypertension screening and giving a patient a medical clearance when we are supposed to makes all the difference. And that's where you really feel like, okay, I am saving lives through prevention. And that keeps me in a practice knowing that I'm able to provide my patient with the best care. And also just being interested in the newest technology. I love that about the doctor that I work with. Like, I get so excited to tell him about something that I learned about because he's excited about it too. And that just keeps us fueled, as providers, is to continue learning new things and implement them. So I think that's huge. And given the time and support that we needed in order to provide that care makes all the difference. I think a lot of times we're trying to shorten appointment times and we're trying to see quantity over quality. And I think when you really learn the difference between the two and you find that quality will take you a lot farther and get you more production in the long run, I just think it changes everything in hygiene. Like, if you can practice that co-diagnosing in a way that is successful, you realize, oh, there's more production to be made if we can gain patients' trust, keep them in the practice, and also bring them back for the restorative treatment that they need. So it's really all about the relationship between the hygienist and the dentist.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of someone taught that to me a while ago and just said, hey, my vision with, case acceptance in general is that, hey, I'm 100% case acceptance if we focus on the long-term relationship and the long-term view, and just say, if they're not ready to accept this treatment right now, we just want to come back in for their next cleaning. Honestly, if we continue to see them and see them regularly and continue to build that trust, more often than not, we're going to resolve all those issues in the long run, And so I think if having that kind of mindset helps out tremendously, and it just builds that patient loyalty, and that's what helps the practice so much. It takes off, for me, it just removes a lot of that pressure, that you're trying to get them to accept this treatment all at once. And patients feel that sometimes, and they're like, oh man, they might be financially okay to do it, but they just feel overwhelmed with all that, And so I think if you are, kind of stepping back and just saying, hey, we'll take this piece by piece, or whenever you're ready, we're still here for you. And it doesn't mean that if you don't accept this treatment, we're not here for you. And I think that's just where, it's if they have that good relationship with the hygienist, they're going to be coming back for their 6-month appointment, and then, like you said, all that quality is there, and that leads to ultimately more production and more case acceptance.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, because like when I was always trained, to review the pending treatment with the patient. And so that's something that I always do when I see a patient. Like, I'm like, oh, have you thought about this, getting this done? Were you still thinking about, Invisalign or clear aligners? Or if they have a pending cavity that they haven't gotten done, I'll say, oh, do you remember that you had a cavity on tooth number 2? And sometimes they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, here's your x-ray. This is what doctor diagnosed last time. And I just review it with them. And like you said, I mean, definitely there are financial barriers there, but I think long-term, if you're able to retain that patient, they end up coming back for the treatment when they can.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Britt, we're kind of coming down to it, but I want to ask you a couple more questions real quick. And you've mentioned a few of them, but what are some of the most missed opportunities you feel like from a hygienist standpoint? What are those missed opportunities when it comes to hygiene? You feel like the practices are really kind of dropping the ball on?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is getting quantity over quality.
Yeah.
So shortening our appointment times and taking away the time that we already have. Kind of missing the mark of of communication to building those communication skills, which sounds so weird when you first get into dentistry. You're like, what does that have to do with
Yeah.
what I'm doing? But it does
Yeah.
play a big role. And really strengthening that bond between the dentist and the hygienist.
Yeah. So with that in mind, what are some ways that you can do that to make it a stronger bond, a stronger relationship?
I think continuing education is a great way to do that. Finding a class that you're both interested in and attending it together and maybe implementing it in the practice. We just started using AI for uh, helping to look at x-rays and everything. And that's
Yeah.
been really fun because we're able to like look at it together. And again, it's like a co-diagnosing, but also like it shows bone levels, it shows perio. So I think continuing education is a great way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a discovery for both of you, going through that
Mm-hmm.
together. And yeah, I love that. I love that. What are, from a marketing standpoint, what would you say are ways that you can make that marketing more authentic, and patient friendly from the chair? So, I was thinking about, would you feel comfortable, like if a practice were promoting just to come in for cleaning, to feature like the hygienist and a little bit more about that specific, that provider instead of just the doctor as a whole? Or, what are some ways, I guess, yeah, to make it more effective, would you say?
Yeah, I think that there's great opportunity if you have an employee that wants to be involved in that way. I think that social media just makes things so fun. And that's what patients want to see. They want to see that, you can laugh a little, you can have fun in a practice. And yes, it's teeth, it's dentistry, but, there is fun to be had. And so, like, I feel like if you have an employee that wants to make videos and stuff, like have fun with it, and maybe even showing like your personality a little bit if you want to. I think that just comes off in content. You can kind of get a vibe from somebody. So it might be kind of cool to have like a separate role or an hour within like a week or a month or something where they can create content, something that is a little bit different than seeing a patient. That might be kind of fun for somebody to do. They might actually like it. And I
Yeah.
think it helps like you be able to be creative, which in dentistry, we don't always get that chance. So it's
Yeah.
kind of nice.
Well, and that kind of helps them see too. I think just put them in almost like an owner's perspective, I mean, where they feel a little bit more vested. They see kind of what the importance of doing things like this is, and how that comes into play with their role and their job. What are Britt, what are some things that they could do to get started? If they're thinking, well, I've never done this before, I'm thinking about doing some content. What's an easy way to get started for them?
Well, I think if a practice is looking to start with social media, take a look at what is already out there and just kind of get an idea, because there's so many practices out there, and some are doing some really funny like content that's is really great, really good.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of good examples out there to start with. And I mean, I would personally recommend having multiple platforms, just because if you're going to make content, you might as well use it on multiple places. So having the Instagram, the TikTok, the Facebook, because they're all just a different audience and their algorithms are different. So, starting something small and dedicating an hour at some point to make some videos and just put it out there. But you do have to be consistent. I think that's where people fall short a lot. You put a couple videos out there and then you don't really gain any traction and then you just quit. But it's the long term that you're looking for, that you're going for. So you do have to continuously do it, but maybe set out a plan of, one day a month or 1 hour a week or whatever it is to create some videos and kind of just put them out throughout the week or whatever it is, and kind of start slow and build it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Start slow. I think that's a great way to do it. And to think about, like you said, look at the examples out there, see what is kind of a good fit for you, what feels, authentic, in that sense, or feels easier that way. And then just, yeah, build on it little by little. Cause yeah, it's so much of it is just the long game. It's just, hey, I'm just going to do it. Just be consistent with it and it'll prove effective in the long run for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people think it's about going viral, which
Yeah.
it's cool. Like, you could get lots and lots of videos, but I don't think that that is it doesn't sustain anything. It happens and your video might get millions of views, but then it kind of falls off. So you have to keep building. You can go viral, whatever, whenever, a video takes that turn, but that's not what is going to get you like a long-term effect or bring in a ton of patients to your practice. You have to keep on putting content out there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Britt, this has been awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I know
Yes.
you're busy. You've got a lot of things going on. So I really appreciate you taking the time. If there's people that want to learn more about what you do and how to get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so all of my social media handles are Brush with Britt with 2 T's. And then if you wanted to email me, it's just brushwithbritt@gmail.com.
Easy. Awesome. I
Yeah,
love it.
easy. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. You bet. We'll have to have you back again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You bet.